I sat in my car outside my parents' house staring at the front door like it was the entrance to a courtroom. It was my mother's birthday, and I had driven 6 hours from Chicago to be there. For 7 years, I had been sending money home every single month, hoping that one day they would finally see me. But deep down, I always felt like a stranger in my own family. That night, everything I believed about my family was about to shatter. Before I tell you what happened inside that house, I want to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. What I am about to share changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I learned early that love in my family was not distributed equally. My brother Derek was 3 years older than me, and from the moment I could remember, he was the sun that my parents orbited around. He was the star quarterback, the homecoming king, the son who made my father's chest puff up with pride at every football game. My parents never missed a single one of his games. They would drive hours to watch him throw a ball, cheering so loud you could hear them from across the field. Me, I was the quiet one, the one who preferred books over balls, who found comfort in stories rather than sports. I loved writing. I would spend hours in my small room at the end of the hallway crafting tales about adventures I would never have. My room was tiny, tucked away next to the storage closet, while Derek had the large bedroom with windows overlooking our backyard. I never complained. I just accepted it as the way things were. When I was 12 years old, I won first place in a statewide writing competition. I remember running home clutching that certificate like it was made of gold, my heart pounding with excitement. I burst through the front door breathless, ready to share my victory. My mother was in the kitchen, and my father was reading the newspaper at the table. I held up my certificate, words tumbling out of my mouth about the competition, the judges, how they said my story was the most original they had read in years. My mother glanced at the certificate and said, "That is nice, dear." Then she turned to my father and said, "Did you hear Derek scored the winning touchdown last night? Coach said he has never seen anything like it." I stood there, certificate in hand, invisible. That night, I put the certificate in my drawer and never mentioned it again. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandmother, Eloise. She lived alone in a small cottage about 20 miles from our house, and every summer, my parents would send me to stay with her. I think they did it so they could focus entirely on Derek without me around. But those summers with Grandma Eloise were the happiest times of my childhood. She would sit with me on her porch, teaching me how to make her famous apple pie, telling me stories about my grandfather who passed away before I was born. She read my stories and told me they were beautiful. She looked at me like I mattered. "You do not need to be like anyone else," she told me once, her wrinkled hand covering mine. "You are exactly who you are supposed to be, and that is enough." She passed away when I was 18, just weeks before I left for college. I remember sitting in her empty cottage after the funeral, feeling like the last person who truly loved me was gone. In her will, she left me my grandfather's old pocket watch. Derek got her house. My parents made that decision even though Grandma Eloise never specified who should get what. I did not argue. I just held on to that watch and the memories it carried. I left Ohio the same year. I received a scholarship to a university in Chicago and never looked back. I worked 2 jobs while studying, lived on instant noodles and determination, and graduated with a degree in accounting. By 25, I had landed a decent job at a financial firm in the city. I was finally making something of myself. That was when I decided to start sending money home. It started with $500 a month. I told myself it was the right thing to do. My parents were getting older, Derek had his own family to support, and I wanted to help. But if I'm being honest, deep down, I was still that 12-year-old boy holding a certificate, hoping my parents would finally see me. I sent the money through Derek's account because my parents did not understand online banking. Derek promised he would give it to them. Why would I doubt my own brother? About a year after I started sending money, I called home to check on my parents. My mother mentioned that the roof was leaking badly and they could not afford to fix it. I was confused. I had sent enough money to cover repairs twice over. When I asked her about the money I had been sending, she sounded genuinely puzzled. "What money?" she asked. "You have not sent us anything." My stomach dropped. I called Derek immediately. He laughed it off, saying he had given the money to our parents, but they probably spent it on other things and forgot. "You know how they are," he said. "They are getting older. Memory is not what it used to be." I wanted to believe him. He was my brother. So I let it go and kept sending money, hoping that eventually my contributions would be noticed. 7 years. For 7 years, I sent money home every single month without fail. In the beginning, it was $500. As my salary increased, so did the amount. Eventually, I was sending $750 monthly. I kept every single receipt, every transaction record filed neatly in a folder on my computer. When I finally added it all up, the total was staggering. $63,000. I had sent my family $63,000 over 7 years. Do you know what I sacrificed to send that money? I never took a vacation. Not once in 7 years. While my colleagues traveled to Europe and Asia, I stayed in my small one-bedroom apartment, telling myself that family comes first. I drove the same car I bought used when I was 22, a 12-year-old sedan that rattled every time I went over 50 miles per hour. I turned down dinners with coworkers, skipped happy hours, avoided any expense that was not absolutely necessary. And what was Derek doing during those 7 years? He bought a brand new house in the suburbs with a swimming pool in the backyard. He traded in his car every 2 years for the latest model. He took his wife Sophie on vacations to Paris and Rome, posting pictures on social media that my parents would gush over during our rare phone calls. Derek is so successful, my mother would say. He really knows how to live. The first time I went home after I started sending money was for Thanksgiving during the second year. I had taken time off work, driven 6 hours, and arrived with hope in my heart. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they would acknowledge what I had been doing for them. The entire dinner was about Derek. His job, his new house, his son, who had just started walking. Every time I tried to share something about my life, my mother would find a way to redirect the conversation back to my brother. When I mentioned that I had been promoted at work, she cut me off mid-sentence. Derek just got a raise too, she said. His company really values him. I smiled and nodded and felt something inside me crack. The second time I visited was 2 years later. I had saved up to buy my parents expensive gifts, a cashmere sweater for my mother, a premium leather wallet for my father. I thought maybe if I gave them something tangible, something they could hold in their hands, they would see how much I cared. My mother looked at the sweater and said, "This is too fancy for us. You should not waste money on things like this. Derek bought us practical things we actually need." Later that day, I noticed the cheap coffee maker Derek had given them sitting proudly on the kitchen counter. My gifts were nowhere to be seen. I found them later, shoved into a closet. The third visit broke something fundamental inside me. It was during my 6th year of sending money. I arrived a day early and was walking toward the house when I heard my mother talking to a neighbor on the front porch. I stopped behind a bush, not intending to eavesdrop, but unable to move when I heard my name. "Oh, Derek takes such good care of us," my mother was saying. "He pays for everything you know. We would be lost without him. He is the most devoted son a mother could ask for." Well, she did not mention me, not once, as if I did not exist. I drove back to Chicago that night without going inside. I made up an excuse about a work emergency, and I kept sending money. My friend Marcus was the only person who knew the truth about my family. We worked at the same company and had become close over the years. He had his own complicated family history, so he understood pain that others could not see. After that third visit, I told him what happened. "Willa," he said, looking at me with concern in his eyes, "are you sure the money is actually getting to your parents?" I defended Derek immediately. "He is my brother. He would not steal from me." Marcus just shook his head. "Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we trust the most. I am not saying he did anything wrong. I am just saying you should consider all possibilities." I did not want to consider it. The thought that Derek could be taking my money was too painful to entertain. So I pushed it down and kept living my life of quiet sacrifice. Then 2 weeks before my mother's birthday, she called me. She asked if I was coming home for her party. Derek was organizing everything, she said. It was going to be wonderful. Then she sighed heavily and said, "We are struggling, you know. Money is tight. I wish you could help us the way Derek does. He gives us so much." Something inside me finally snapped. I had sent over $60,000. I had given up vacations, a better apartment, a newer car. And she was telling me she wished I could help like Derek. For the first time in my life, I decided to find out the truth. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. I printed every single transaction receipt. I organized them by date, calculated the totals, highlighted the account they were sent to. Derek's account. I put everything in a folder and placed it in my car. I did not know what I would find at that birthday dinner, but I knew I could not keep living this lie. My mother's house was decorated beautifully when I arrived. Balloons on the mailbox, flowers on the porch, voices and laughter spilling out from inside. Derek had done an impressive job organizing the party. There were neighbors, relatives, friends from church, all gathered to celebrate my mother's 65th birthday. When I walked through the door, the greetings I received were polite but cool. A few handshakes, a couple of quick nods. Derek approached me with his television smile and gave me a hug that felt like a warning. "Good to see you, little brother," he said quietly, his hand gripping my shoulder a little too tight. "Let us just have a nice evening, okay? Do not make things awkward." His wife, Sophie, stood behind him, and I noticed something strange in her expression. She looked at me with what almost seemed like guilt, her eyes darting away when I met her gaze. The dinner table was set beautifully. My mother sat at the head, beaming with joy. Derek took the seat of honor on her right side. I was placed on her left, which might have seemed equal but felt like an afterthought. The food was excellent. The conversation was not. My father stood up to make a toast. He raised his glass and spoke about what a blessing it was to have family, how grateful he and my mother were for their sons. Then he turned to Derek. "To Derek," he said, his voice thick with pride, "the best son a father could ask for. You have taken care of us when we needed it most. We would not be standing in this house without you." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, my hand trembling slightly. Not a single word about me. Not one. After dinner, as people mingled with coffee and cake, one of my distant relatives approached me. An aunt I barely remembered, her face pinched with curiosity. "So Willa," she said, "what do you do up there in Chicago? Do you help your parents out at all?" Before I could answer, my mother appeared beside us, laughing lightly. "Oh, Willa is very busy with his own life," she said. "Not like Derek. Derek always puts family first." My father had joined the group, now nodding in agreement. "Willa has never been as good as Derek," he said, as if stating an obvious fact. "He will never be as good as his brother." The room seemed to agree, with quiet chuckles and knowing looks. Something inside me, something that had been building for 32 years, finally broke free. I put down my coffee cup and stood up. The room grew quiet. "If I will never be as good as Derek," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside my chest, "then tell Derek to pay all the bills. I am not sending money anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face went pale. She stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the table. "What money, but," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we have never received a single dollar from you." I looked at Derek. His face had changed. The confident smile was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. "Is that so?" I said. I walked out to my car, grabbed the folder, and returned to the dining room where everyone stood frozen. I placed the folder on the table and opened it. Page after page of transaction receipts. Dates, amounts, account numbers, all there in black and white. 7 years, I said, spreading the papers across the table. Every single month, a total of $63,450, all sent to Derek's account. He was supposed to give it to you. My mother's hands shook as she picked up the papers. My father leaned over her shoulder, his face reddening with each page he read. "Derek," my father said, his voice dangerous. "Explain this." Derek held up his hands. "This is a misunderstanding. I gave them the money. They probably just forgot." "Forgot $63,000, I said. "Then why is the roof still leaking? Why does Mom keep telling me you are struggling?" Sophie, who had been standing silently by the window, suddenly spoke. Her voice was small, but clear. "That money," she said, not looking at anyone. "Derek told me it was his bonus. From work. He used it for the house, for the cars, for our trips." The room erupted. My mother started crying. My father was shouting at Derek. Relatives were whispering, some already heading for the door. Derek tried to deny it, tried to explain, But there was nothing he could say. The evidence was undeniable. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel vindicated. I just felt empty. "I did not come here to destroy anyone," I said, picking up the gift I had brought for my mother, a silk scarf she had once mentioned wanting. I placed it gently on the table in front of her. "I just wanted you to know the truth. Happy birthday, Mom." I walked out the front door and did not look back. In my car, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I cried. Not from anger or bitterness, but from release. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself. For the first time, I had refused to be invisible. The first few weeks after that dinner were the hardest of my life. My mother called repeatedly. I did not answer. My father sent text messages, awkward apologies from a man who had never apologized for anything. Derek was completely silent. I took a week off work and stayed in my apartment processing everything. Marcus came by every day with food sitting with me even when I did not want to talk. He understood that sometimes presence is more important than words. I let myself grieve. I grieved for the childhood I never had, for the parents who never saw me, for the brother I thought I knew. I cried for the 12-year-old boy with the writing certificate, for the teenager who lost his grandmother, for the man who spent 7 years trying to buy love. After 2 weeks of darkness, Marcus convinced me to see a therapist. It was the best decision I ever made. In therapy, I learned about something called the inner child, that part of us that still carries the wounds of our younger years. I realized I had spent my entire adult life trying to heal that child by earning my parents' approval. But no amount of money, no sacrifice, no achievement would ever fill that void. The love I was seeking had to come from within. I started making changes, small ones at first. I used the money I had been sending home to take myself on a trip. I went to the Grand Canyon, something I had always wanted to do. I stood on the edge of that vast chasm, feeling the wind on my face, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. I started writing again. Late at night after work, I would sit at my kitchen table and pour my heart onto paper. I wrote about my grandmother, about the summers on her porch, about the watch that still ticked against my wrist. Writing became my therapy, my meditation, my way of making sense of a senseless childhood. 6 months after the birthday dinner, I decided to visit my parents one final time, not to reconcile, but to close a chapter. The house looked different when I arrived, smaller somehow, less intimidating. My parents met me at the door with nervous smiles. We sat in the living room where I had once felt so unwelcome, and we talked. My mother apologized through tears. She said she never knew about the money, that she had trusted Derek completely. My father admitted for the first time in his life that he had favored Derek because Derek reminded him of himself. He said he was sorry he never appreciated who I was. I learned that Derek had been forced to sell his house to repay the money. He and Sophie were separating. He had not spoken to our parents since the birthday dinner. Did their apologies heal everything? No. Some wounds are too deep for words to reach. But I found something that day that I had not expected. I found closure. "I am not asking you to love me the way you love Derek," I told them. "I just need you to see me as your son. Not better, not worse, just your son." My father nodded, his eyes wet. My mother reached for my hand. I visit them now a few times a year. Our relationship is not perfect, but it is honest. They know who I am finally, and I no longer need their approval to know my own worth. Derek and I have not spoken since that night. Maybe we never will. I have made peace with that. You cannot force someone to be the brother you needed. You can only accept the brother they chose to be. I learned something important through all of this. I spent my whole life trying to buy love, thinking that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, people would finally see me. But that is not how love works. Real love does not need to be purchased. Real love sees you without a price tag. Now, every month I still set aside money, but instead of sending it to people who never appreciated it, I put it in my own savings account. I am investing in the one person who will never betray me, myself. And you know what? That is the best investment I have ever made. If you are watching this and feeling like you have been trying to buy someone's love, I want you to hear me. Stop. You are worthy of love just as you are. You do not need to empty your bank account or your soul to earn what should be freely given. The people who truly love you will see you without you having to prove anything. So let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most? Have you ever tried to earn love that should have been given freely? Share your story in the comments below. You are not alone. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Your support helps me continue sharing these stories. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. I hope you find people who love you for who you are, not for what you give. Take care of yourselves and remember you are enough exactly as you are.